So the last time I tried to play through Vice City was in 2012. Like I said when discussing GTA 3, I'd played it as early as 2003 when it came out, then technically it was the first PS2 game I got, which I played for several days until getting San Andreas. I did continue to try and play it off and on, particularly after I'd exhausted San Andreas, but similar to GTA 3, the light car physics and clunkier gameplay left it hard for me to stay engaged, particularly since the big draw for me with San Andreas was how massive the world was, how much content it had, and how it incorporated RPG elements. Vice City felt empty in comparison. You have to understand that having a game as big and grand as San Andreas back then was the new thing. It was an extreme rarity. So unlike now, where minigames feel bloated for those exact same reasons, that was genuinely an engaging bullet point in the mid-2000s. Same thing with games like Elder Scrolls or Gran Turismo 4 with its 700 plus cars. Bigger was new, so bigger was refreshing. It was amazing to play a game that felt truly endless. When I picked GTA 3 back up in 2012 or so, I decided I should do Vice City as well, almost like I could pretend they were two sides of a single game, that made them feel bigger than they were, despite both of them realistically being fairly small investments compared to San Andreas. I also had so much experience with San Andreas, Saints Row 1, GTA 4, and even Red Dead Redemption at that point, that I was sure I could plow through them to finally see the end. In Vice City, I got stuck on the mission Cannon Fodder, which is roughly halfway through the game. But importantly, Vice City allows you to do the last 2/3 of missions in almost any order. As such, I actually got about 95% of the way through the game, and reached a point where that mission was one of the few missions I had left. It was a bottleneck that I still couldn't beat in order to progress, in spite of completing most of the missions that unlocked after it. This time, I beat the mission first try. Part of that is because the game was running at a much smoother 60 frames a second. Part of it was the higher resolution allowing me to more clearly see far-off enemies. Part of it was knowing that this was the mission that frustrated me so much before, so I came in cautious from the start. And also importantly, part of it is that playing this modded version on PC gives me third-person camera control like San Andreas. While the design quirks and polish that separated San Andreas from GTA 3 in my head all this time are still squarely parts of Vice City, playing through Vice City now helped me realize exactly how much closer to San Andreas it is than GTA 3 in other ways. The cars are still light, for example, but they no longer feel near as bouncy. They still have far less health than in San Andreas, but the cars still have more health than in GTA 3, and things like hitting light poles seem to do less damage. The lock-on is still closer to 3 than San Andreas, and it still can be really finicky in terms of who it chooses to lock onto, if anyone at all, but you have a rudimentary crouch that stabilizes guns and makes you a smaller target now. The story is still much less involved than San Andreas's is, but comparing Vice City's story to GTA 3's is like comparing The Last of Us to an instruction manual for a clothes dryer. Vice City does set stuff up and then refuses to touch it for most of the game. And then other times it doesn't set anything up at all, but it at least feels like Tommy Vercetti has agency here, and lots of it. He's playing all the players that think they're playing him, which interestingly makes Lance Vance's betrayal at the end hit solidly, because Lance is the only one who seems to always be one step ahead of Tommy in ways he can't quite understand. So when you hear Lance start to get manic and unstable, you start to get worried. Apparently, this also works really well when paired with Lance's part in Vice City stories. This is still a really simple, overly referential narrative. It's not particularly well paced, you're still jumping to and fro between characters you'll usually never see again after their mission strand ends, and while Lance's betrayal is fun, he and Tommy never get enough time together for me to believe that Tommy would trust him, let alone befriend him. Tommy is usually off doing his own thing, and Lance intentionally keeps his role very vague the entire time. After how frustrated Tommy is when the initial deal that starts the game off goes wrong, I struggle to believe that he wouldn't just want to cap Lance because he's an unknown entity. The cutscene direction, voice acting, and dialogue are all solid enough here that it's still a fun ride, but it's a ride where you just kind of want to turn your brain off and watch the pretty 1980s inspired neon colors. One of the aspirations of GTA 5's Michael is to make movies like the schlock he loved growing up, and never grew out of. Vice City is the disjointed, shallow, referential, but reverently indulgent type of story I'd imagine him putting together. I could imagine Tommy Vercetti being his intentional self-insert, with Lance being an unintentional manifestation of the demons in his closet. So many words I just used to basically say the obvious. Vice City is a GTA game through and through, and comes between GTA 3 and San Andreas in terms of release and design advancements. But it's the subtle shifts from 3 that really captivated me as I played. I already did it a bit earlier, but let's go through the rest of the comparisons I have to every major point I made about GTA 3. How does it compare and contrast? Firstly, even though GTA 3's world was fairly small, Vice City's is even smaller. It's maybe the size of a couple Driver 2 maps, where GTA 3 was more like 3 of them. However, I think this works to Vice City's advantage. It being smaller means it's much easier to learn your way around if you're not spending dozens and dozens and dozens of hours in it. It also means the world as a whole is more consistently interesting. GTA 3's world is pretty concise, and neither game is trying to create the grander scale of San Andreas. But Vice City has something interesting around every corner, whereas GTA 3 has clumps of interesting world design, and clumps of nothing but streets surrounding tall, lifeless blocks pretending to be skyscrapers. Vice City also has a map. It's unfortunate that you have to scroll to it every time you enter the menu rather than it being the default, but you won't need it quite as often as GTA 3 could have used. This is because the minimap also better illustrates what is where. Ammunitions and paint sprays and such show up when you get close, and since the game only has 2 main islands that are fairly narrow with multiple easy to access exits between them, it's not particularly common that you'll have a destination marker leave you unsure whether you need to head for one of those exits or head to a part of the current island instead. And even when it happens, you have a map. Vice City is also generally far easier and more fair. Missions are more varied in terms of goals, and they don't punish mistakes nearly as hard for the most part. Mission timers aren't near as strict as a whole, and even when they are kind of tight, this being a facsimile of Miami in the 1980s means that it's full of incredibly quick sports cars to help you out. There are also far fewer gangs in Vice City, meaning significantly less confusion about who drives what vehicles and whatnot. They also introduce each gang properly before you'd ever need to know such information. The necessity of knowing about each gang is far lesser anyway. A drawback in a vacuum, because the idea of organically needing to understand gangs in these games is cool, but considering how poorly GTA 3 handled gang knowledge, I'd say that's still a net improvement. No manual or physical map needed, which is great if you have a digital-only version. Car hoods fly off fairly quickly after they're opened here, meaning they no longer stay in your way. Anytime you have to use a boat is equally as janky in Vice City as it was in GTA 3. However, I'm not even sure this game had more than maybe one instance where you had to manually find your way back to land from a boat, so even though Tommy still can't swim any better than Claude, it never mattered. I never had a civilian carjack me right after I carjacked them from the passenger side. You're always given just enough time to get away if you're quick on the throttle. The lock-on is still not great, and you can still be melted really quickly, but usually the amount of enemies is lesser, and they're not as trigger-happy from a distance. They also seem to have stronger accuracy drop-off, particularly if you're sprinting. Armor is also much easier to come by, and saving now heals you, meaning not near as much running around between missions. I also generally got plenty of ammo, though there are a few missions that will delete your ammo in annoying ways if you're not careful. One example is the mission Check Out at the check-in. You have to head to an airport which forces you to drop your weapons outside. Then you grab a hidden sniper rifle, snipe a target, grab something from them and leave. But since you had to leave your weapons behind, for some reason the sniper rifle ammo you pick up replaces any ammo you already had when you pick your original rifle back up. The same happens if you pick up the SMG that was held by your target, meaning you might go from having thousands of bullets to less than 100 for no reason. And in Vice City, you generally make far less money from missions, because the emphasis here is on buying assets, which when you complete their mission strands will earn you passive income. This passive income, of course, ends up being a tedium replacement for GTA 3's armor, ammo, and health runs, because you have to manually go to each asset to pick up your cash. I'll talk a bit more about assets later though. The lower payouts in Vice City do have a bit of an impact if you're the type of person to continue playing if you're wasted or busted, instead of saving after every mission and saves coming when you fail. Weapons are generally cheaper to compensate for the lower funds, but early on it could very easily be a problem, I'd imagine. The more condensed map once again saves the day in terms of retries. Sometimes they still suck, particularly if the start of a mission has a lot of unskippable setup scenes or is really slow. The mission Martha's Mugshot is a perfect example, where the initial tailing is painful on repeat attempts, but the guys waiting for you in the stairwell once you need to escape are ruthless. But you're never more than maybe a minute and a half from the start of the mission at least, from anywhere on the map, and every asset has a save point, meaning if you're doing asset missions, you're never more than 10 seconds away from a retry. Traffic follows the laws much more cleanly now, and tend not to switch lanes or turn at supersonic speeds anymore. The roads are also generally a bit wider as well, and you're surrounded by sidewalks and grass a lot of the time rather than skyscraper walls. All that said, there are a few weaknesses unique to Vice City that brought parts of the experience down. One of the most major ones is that you need to more or less complete all of the major side missions in order to unlock the final 2 missions, and you have to do this while not knowing which ones are going to be more difficult and involved, or less difficult and involved. And unfortunately, this means you need to buy nearly every asset along the way, so if you aren't getting and completing them as soon as you unlock them and have cash to spare, you'll be way behind in terms of cash and have to wait around to make up for it. Well, unless you know of either a glitch that I saw mentioned online after I'd already finished, or a specific repeatable optional mission. I won't say much about the glitch because I didn't look too much into it, but the optional mission is a race at the back of the Sunshine Autos asset. I'm not sure if you have to buy Sunshine Autos in order to do these races, because I only found them after I owned it. But either way, the last race is pretty easy if you're decently skilled with GTA's vehicle physics and find a cheetah, which are all over the place. You need to risk $10,000 to attempt it, but each success gets you $40,000, meaning a $30,000 profit for like 4 minutes of work. Considering the most expensive asset is only $120,000, that's not too bad. Though even if you don't need Sunshine Autos to do these races, having its save point and garage to refresh and keep your cheetah nearby greatly increases the convenience of this money-making method. Most of the assets come with normal mission strands that feel very much like story missions. Some, like the ice cream truck, will instead have a short minigame tied to them. Some of these side missions can be brutal, like the final Malibu Club mission, G Spotlight, where you have to jump a motorcycle between at least a dozen rooftops. This mission is a great idea, but it sucks that it can be needlessly difficult to gauge the necessary speed for several jumps. Many jumps punish going too fast with major bike damage or missing your intended roof entirely, and just landing on many roofs as intended damages the bike. It also has several early cutscenes, including a really long unskippable one that happens every time you fall off the roofs and head back to try again. Luckily, you might spot a helicopter nearby early on, which once you jump across the first couple roofs, can be grabbed to fly through the objectives instead. Most of the asset side missions are pretty easy though. The bigger problem, aside from them potentially sidelining the conclusion of the narrative for anywhere from 5 to 15 or more hours, depending on your skill is that you don't know beforehand which assets come with shorter mission strands or easier missions, or even the more interesting and important missions. While I recommended Sunshine Autos beforehand, for example, I only did so for the reasons outlined. Its actual asset mission strand that needs completed in order for it to count toward your total is your standard car exporting side content, which can take ages if you don't look up exactly where to get every car. And all of this in order to unlock a final mission that sucks ass. The idea itself is fun enough, and I don't mind the execution in a vacuum. The problem is that it's fairly inconsistent how many enemies show up and from which doorways. There are several traps and misdirections along the way, like the exploding barrels when you chase Lance onto the roof, or the game acting like you constantly need to be retreating to kill the guy stealing from your safe. You don't. Lance also has a ton of health and great accuracy, as does Tony Cipriani once he shows up at the end with endlessly spawning goons and 2 bodyguards next to him. You do have access to 2 full heals and armors, but it just doesn't feel like enough, especially with the janky lock-on. It probably took me over 10 tries to get this mission done, where I don't think a single other one took me more than 5, and most of them were 1 or maybe 2. I could only sigh with relief once I'd finally finished the game, but it was purely because of the frustration of the final mission and the tedium of realizing I had to do nearly every asset mission, right as I was gearing up to finish the main story. Having these missions in the game and even be required is fine, but don't blindside me with them right at the last second. Otherwise, unlike GTA 3, I quite enjoyed most of my time with Vice City. It's a game I could see myself returning to every half-decade or so, and the soundtrack is fucking killer as someone who adores 80s music. It has its frustrating moments, and while it doesn't feel like a clunky mess like GTA 3 does, it still feels a bit archaic compared to San Andreas. But this is also a game where I think using a money cheat or something would greatly alleviate some of the most frustrating aspects. I can't say for sure that the official definitive edition would be a better game, honestly. It depends on how much improved the lock-on and such are, and I think that's a testament to all of the little things they ironed out here. It reminds me of the Crash Insane trilogy, where Crash 1 desperately needed an update like GTA 3. But Crash 2 and 3? Not so much in terms of raw polish. I can absolutely see why this is a lot of people's favorite of the PS2 trilogy of GTA games, if you're looking for something mafia-rific with tons of fantastic music and neon, but in a mostly concise package. I'm glad that's the case, because after finishing GTA 3, I was more morbidly curious about finishing Vice City than actually interested in it. But where I was begging for each play session of GTA 3 to stop, and it put me in a bad mood for a while afterwards, I was content to lose myself in Vice City, only to realize my capture was going on past 4 hours, and I needed to be responsible enough to stop, or let my controller charge, or whatever. There are moments I wish I could skip, but I think the whole overcomes them. Vice City is nothing spectacular, but it's solid, and it still genuinely holds up.